Heard y'all the race kit folks been yapping about. Just got your lucky break. Them fellas y'all rode with were just a bunch of wannabes. But not me, I tell you. Catch y'all on Stern Stripes, young buck.
Hi, we are back at it again with racing only in American cars in Gran Turismo 3 to see how many events we can win like this. Today, we are going to tackle the race of NA Sports. Instead of looking at the car's drivetrain, we now look at its aspiration instead. As its name suggests, this event only accepts cars that has zero turbos in it. As for my turboless cruiser, she perfectly fits the bill. After giving this car extra horsepower, into the races I've gone. The first race was set in the Apricot Hill Raceway, a track you won't find anywhere in the planet outside of video games, as this is indeed a Gran Turismo original. On turn 1, I went deep on the inside lane to catch up to the rest of the pack, and remained on my lane to overtake 3 cars, including the French, after giving him a polite gesture. As my car had started to widen out, I swept the 206 along in an effort to defend my newly gained spot. Now that the small fries had been taken care of, it was time to tangle with the big boys. And around the 5th corner, my hunch turned out to be true, as I was in the attacking range to oust this Mazda once and for all. Before we entered the 7th corner, I gave the little car a little off tap as my way to say, "We're done, stop fighting." I tried all that I could to prevent the little car's resurgence on the white corner, but all was for naught, as the Miat apparently had the power to retake P2. Not only that, but the French made quite a surprising return and took the bronze medal away from yours truly on the straights. On this sharp corner, I made my move. I went deep to race the curbs while ensuring the car kept its ideal grip down the pin. In one fell swoop, both the Peugeot and the Mazda was overtaken. At long last, second place was at hand. However, my fight was not over. The MRS once again proved to be quite the adversary for both me and my cruiser to drive over were I to clear this event, as proven by the 3rd checkpoint where the MRS was almost 2 seconds ahead. I kept my cool and kept driving. I figured if I kept to the better racing line, I would eventually close the gap and catch even the mighty MRS. I then utilized the entirety of the track down the 14th corner to keep the cruiser as fast as possible down the final corner, before surrendering to the fact that the MRS was simply faster on the straights. By lap 2, the gap had been cut by roughly 0.5 seconds, a good sign of things to come. On the 2nd corner, I get to see the MRS being less than optimal, which was my opportunity to come closer and strike. I kept through Chrysler to the curbs as I raced down the 7th corner to catch the fleeting Toyota. And I'll be lying if I say a slight sense of dread did not wash me down the straights. However, I refused to cower in fear and decided to keep on driving hard. By the 3rd checkpoint though, things were not looking so grand. The MRS was a second and a half away, and we were only a few corners away from the finish line. So from how this race had gone, I can safely say I was performing better on the corners, but the cruiser was barely hanging onto the track, with only one wheel remaining on the curb. But I had enough speed to steal the inner lane away from the MRS on the final corner, and with that, I had finally gained 1st place, as the Toyota showed too many signs of fear to make bold moves. The MRS made one last attempt to rectify this error. I managed to catch wind of this and parried the attempt. In the end, I have finally managed to take the first win required to complete the challenge. The next race was set in yet another Gran Turismo original, the Grand Valley Speedway. This time, I remembered to launch from 2nd gear to minimize wheel spin. This helped in ensuring the cruiser was close to the pack right off the starting line. This time, the Chrysler Sport alone was enough to overtake both the Beetle and the Bima. Not long after that, the Vince's time on the podium was up, as even this little sleeper was no match for my cruiser. Before the first hairpin, I shifted lanes to take on the Miat. A short duel ensued between us, as I was still trying to grasp the proper point of turning on the sharp right. In the end, however, I managed to outrace the Mazda, as I left the hairpin behind. From that point onwards, my challenge would be overtaking the MRS and staying ahead. This time, I managed to climb up just in time as the MRS showed enough power to remain ahead down the next few corners. I, however, decided to defy this so-called dominance, one curve at a time. On the 2nd hairpin, I have managed to close the distance between us through a rather brave entry. Thanks to this stunt, I was able to remain within the MRS's slipstreaming range. As I tailed the small Toyota down, I copied its racing line until turn 7, where I decided to strike by going deep. Then, it was time for me to remain vigilant of comeback attempts the Toyota will attempt in the future. As I made my way past the second checkpoint, I wasn't even a second ahead of the yellow car, which shows that the MRS has what it takes to overturn my victory, which is dangerous to my run. Carefully, I took on the 10th turn, ensuring the car does not understeer to the right, nor turning too sharply to the left. As the cruiser was capable of running within the track's limits, I managed to keep my lead and probably, just probably, extend my lead against that Toyota. And would you look at that? The third checkpoint had been passed, 0.8 seconds of lead between me and the MRS. Entering the tunnel, I managed to point the nose of the cruiser to the correct direction, which helped tremendously in keeping my momentum down this rather long and wide curve. All things considered, I think my rendition on both turn 13 and 14 was alright. As always, there are still rooms for improvement, but we'll hopefully see to it on the second lap. For now, I simply need to focus on keeping the Chrysler to the leftmost side of the track to properly take on the final corner of the lap. That was lap 1, almost a second ahead of the MRS. In my opinion, this is quite the easy race, considering on how much on my throat that guy was in the previous race. This time, I put less pressure on the cruiser compared to before, as I drove down the first hairpin of the track. Steady and surely, I came out from the hairpin with proper momentum. As I raced past the first checkpoint, it was revealed that finally, I was at least a second away from the MRS, once again proving that the pace I was on was fast enough to win the entire race. The game suggested the third gear for my cruiser to cruise down the hairpin, but I think that was not exactly right, as even on the second gear, the car still was too fast to handle the hairpin. I left the asphalt, not by intention, and only has 2 wheels on the curves while the rest had eaten grass. That, of course, was far less than ideal, something that I had to keep an eye for, since the MRS is in no way completely defenseless. The MRS managed to maintain the distance between us as shown by the third checkpoint, meaning that while I was fast enough to keep leading, I could not drop my pace, as that would allow my opponents to close in and eventually overtake. On the chicane itself, I decided to get as close as possible to the limits of the track, thinking it was the best move I could make on such corners. These actions allowed me to keep my lead. I could feel the gap growing by the final corner as I raced down to the finish line with everything this cruiser could muster. Though truth to be told, I was expecting more resistance from my rivals, especially with the tough opponents such as the MRS and the Miata in the roster. In the end, I managed to nail first place on the second race of the event, onwards to the final race. The third venue of the race of NA Sports was, once again, the Apricot Hill Raceway. Only this time, we are racing in a mirror direction. Not long after the race had started, the Blue Beetle had started beefing with the BMW driver. This goofy shenanigan has placed the Volkswagen quite behind, near enough for me to start slipstreaming. Unfortunately, this time around, my opponents in this race had upped their game. While before I could take on at least half of the grid effortlessly, in this race, I was still lost even after tailgating. I dove onto the chicane, gave the Beetle a little brush, and finally, I've managed to join the ranks of the pack. That was P5 at hand, until the Beetle took it back. Once again, the ferocious Beetle attacked the white BMW, leaving the saloon behind. As we passed the first checkpoint, I was making my way past last place. On the hairpin, I made my move. The dive bomb, while probably controversial, helped me overtake the BMW and, despite the little clash, allowed me to take on the Beetle. Yep, the red A86 is the big one. I don't think he's gonna come back from now on. On the straights though, the BMW, no longer bullied by the Beetle, showed superiority in power as he claimed my bronze medal. Well, that was bad. The Volkswagen was up for round 2 right after I entered turn 8. Unfortunately for him, I was ready for this attack and parried it. I have also ensured to tailgate the BMW for reduced wind resistance, which allowed me to keep up with the rather twitchy Bima. This fight had gotten me a bit too engrossed, to the point of entering the 10th corner with arguably too much speed, causing a rather nasty side thrust, which sent the BMW to the grass. But still, it did not deter the white car from hogging the podium, or at least that's what would have happened if the rather rude introduction to the greenery didn't ruin the BMW's stability and line. Thought I felt a bit dirty about it. That was still P3, back in hand. The probably angry BMW driver made another attempt to reclaim P3 on the straights, I was about to make extensive defensive maneuvers when I remembered that I was still stronger on the corners. As I had expected, the white car backed off on its own as we entered the corner. Not only that, but looks like love was blossoming on the track between the French and the Miat. Together, they decided to cut the corner, but forgot about the sand, which drastically slowed cars down. This time, their mistake had proven to be fatal, as the 206 was too slow to prevent me from gaining second place. Don't you worry, my French love-making addict friend. I'll reunite your lover with you soon. Behind me, that is. Eager to be with his lover once again, the Peugeot tried to make a hasty attack on the corner. However, I was already aiming for this lane, and thus, foiling this rather rushed strike. Well, as much as I like the progress I've made on the hairpin, the Miat was still too fast for my cruiser on the straights. Not only that, but the French was also trying to make a comeback with sheer power on this section too. I decided to move in and defend, and managed to prevent the 206 from taking P2 back. While the Mazda had gotten too wide on the 8th corner, I kept my cruiser on the side lane in the name of optimizing my run on this race. On the 10th corner, history did repeat itself with the MX-5. After eating grass on that corner, the Miat goes to eat more grass right on the next one. What an absolute serial grass toucher. At the very least, the Frenchman gets to be reunited with his lover this way. I knew that this chance would not come twice. If I let up now, either the Mazda or the Peugeot will irreversibly claim my position and ruin my... Okay, I kept hearing grass noises. What's going on back there? They're still at it. Look at them, absolute fools. Thanks for the win. All y'all's driving had pretty much given that on the silver platter. Winning the race of NA Sports had awarded me with a Del Sol. While not a bad car, this is still not quite American, and so I will have no choice but to get rid of it. Ah! The next event on the chopping block for today would be the one event that requires you to have an American car to have a chance at participating. The Stars and Stripes event, filled with tough cars with at least double the horsepower my cruiser has, such as the Viper and the Cobra. To even stand a chance, I thought a Stage 2 turbo upgrade would be necessary. Not only that, but this time, I ensured that the car was fitted with high-grade oil to add more chances of victory on this event. Personally, I think I would rather get at least a Camaro for this one, but... money. Well, the cruiser should be good enough. Well then, into the race I've gone. The first race of this fine event is thematically set on the Seattle circuit, and looks like even the racing slicks weren't able to keep up with the car's power this time around, as even launching from the second gear still results in a huge wheel spin. However, this phenomenon did not seem to be much trouble, as I was able to rejoin the pack in a rather short time. The Camaro was through, marking the first overtake in the... Would you get out of the way? Okay, clearly that approach did not work. Let us try again. On turn 3, the Grand Sport did not take the innermost lane, an oversight turn opportunity which I wasted no time in taking. I took on the 4th corner from the outside to avoid ramming Camaro, as well as maintaining most of the momentum. This worked wonders, as apparently that was enough for me to snatch P3 away from the red Chevrolet. The Viper lost its courage down turn 7, giving me ample opportunities to close the distance between us. I rammed the Snake as a sign of my eventual takeover, and stroked on the 10th corner. Unfortunately, I was read like a book and was blocked. On the straights, the Viper managed to gain some distance from my cruiser. Quite expected in my opinion, as even with all these upgrades, the Viper simply has more power compared to my big Chrysler. On turn 12, however, I took on the inside lane of the corner, using the racing grade tires for maximum grip to overcome the mighty Viper, and I'd finally claimed P2. On the large chicane, I managed to catch up towards the Cobra, who predictably was not as fast down the turning points. I was so confident in the difference in our capacities that I launched an attack down 17th corner, completely expecting an overtake. However, the Cobra was still superior in terms of engine power and managed to be saved from losing the race. For now. On the second lap, I braked late to overtake the Cobra and ensured the powerful Shelby stayed behind. Unfortunately, the Chrysler understeered from this rather frantic driving behavior and widened out. However, all still was not lost, as I held the better lane towards the 3rd corner. The Cobra tried to rectify this error and made the turn. Too bad for him. I was already there. No matter what the Shelby tried to do, I was capable of defending myself. While my win was defended, I was still nowhere safe, as there were still two high-speed sections ahead, sections in where the Cobra could retake P1 with sheer power. On the lower speed areas though, I can relax knowing my cruiser can turn better than that Cobra could ever dream of. Well, not exactly relax, as these curves are my chances to build the gap which would be important to preserve my lead. Slowly but surely, the Cobra was making his way up on the straights to re-challenge me for ultimate victory. Fortunately, the straights had ended before the Cobra could even attack. I used the chicane to regrow the distance, and after getting out from the last set of corners the fastest I could, I used the new turbo to maximum work and sped to the finish line. This time, I had made an even bigger gap against the Cobra, which had pretty much secured me this race. That was it. First place across the line, recording the first we needed to clear this thematic event. The second round was set in super speedway. From the lack of sharp corners present in the track, I believe this is one of the tracks where driving skill would matter less compared to car performance. While the cruiser might be in a total disadvantage this time around, I still had one more weapon left in my arsenal: slipstreaming. At the very least, I will not have to resort to that yet, as the Grand Sport and the Camaro proved to be complete pushovers. The actual challenge began with the Z06 comfortably sitting in P3. It was a good thing that I was still able to pull myself forward through tailgating. The car was reaching its top speed. Had I not reached the corner anytime later, the car would have topped out, which is not good given my circumstances. I sent the cruiser down the corner and unintentionally tapped the Red Viper. That of course did not result in an overtake. However, this unfortunate little stunt did pull me into the Viper's slipstreaming range. On the wider curve down the second lap, I took a tighter lane to take advantage of the cruiser's handling and finally gained P2. From that point on, it was prime time to duel with the Cobra. On the smaller curve, I used a textbook racing line of going into the deeper end from the outside, allowing the cruiser a faster entry, which was what required to finally take P1 from the mighty Cobra. From that point on, the challenge would be defending my position for 2 whole laps, as I'm aware that without slipstreaming, the cruiser's power was dog water compared to like half the grid. Or so I thought. Lap 3 had passed and there was still no notable resistance from the Cobra. On lap 4, I've even gained quite a lead. Guess that was it. A bit underwhelming in my opinion, but a win is still a win. The next race was set in Laguna Seca. Since second gear launch didn't stop wheel spin, how about we launch the car from the third gear? It doesn't work, it does not work. Go back to gear 2. I'm beginning to think maybe I've put too much power into the car. Anyways, that much power was what allowed me to overtake the green Camaro with ease. What is he doing? He's gone. Absolutely pinted. That's just embarrassing. While the Cobra was busy with becoming a meme, I dueled the Grand Sport down the third corner. It seemed as if the Corvette had the upper hand, until it widened out and landed me on P3. Upon reaching turn 5, the Camaro had grown into my attacking range. The slipstream allowed me to slingshot past the Chevrolet and started my hunt against the Red Snake. As the Viper was quite ahead, I decided to use every trick in and out of the box to catch him. Looks like the deal was the same as before. My chances to climb would sit on the corners. I streamlined my approach down the famed corkscrew and made it past Rainey's curve well. But the gap did not seem to mend. It was not after the 10th corner that I could feel the Viper was getting closer. I followed through a textbook racing line down the final corner of the lap, and upon leaving the corner, the Viper went too wide and ate a bit of sand, hurting the lead it has over me. On the second lap, I aimed to take this venomous problem once and for all. On the Andretti hairpin, the Viper took a line too wide, which allowed me to get even closer. I tailed the Viper down turn 3, using the similar line to keep the wind resistance at an all-time low. But unfortunately, that did not last as the Viper flexed its muscles on the straights before turn 5. It was not until turn 6 where I assumed the innermost lane of the corner, grit my teeth, and carried my momentum past the turn to overtake the Viper then and there. Once again, I smoothly went down the corkscrew and started gapping the Dodge on Rainey's curve. By the last corner, the slight lead I had eased the process of defending my victory all the way to the finish line, as the Viper might still be able to use its speed to win the run at the very last second. However, my worries were found to be baseless, as I have managed to reach the finish line first. That was the third win out of 4. The last race of this event was held in Seattle Circuit. Truly, a poetic way to end a series. While some might think that this race is just a rehash of the first one, the reverse layout of the street track might change your opinion. Also at this point, I just let the wheelspin be, fully accepting that there was no escape from it in a cruiser with that much power. The first chicane was up. I had to exert more caution, as the walls did limit my vision and hindered my ability to look beyond the acute turn. Regardless, this minor incident will not stop me, as I was only moments away from overtaking the Camaro. I occupied the innermost lane of the corner, and despite the Camaro's banging protests, that did not change the fact that 5th was already mine. I opted for a safer approach down the second half of the chicane, tailing the Grand Sport for added acceleration and tried as I might to make the tight turn. While not as close as I would have hoped, I was still doing a better job at turning than the Blue Fett and claimed P4. On the long straights, while the two snakes were basically gone, I still was able to tailgate the Camaro and slingshot past it, claiming 3rd place. However, things looked grim as the Cobra and the Viper had managed to grab the rest of the grid by quite a margin. At this point, I was hoping that they would suck at the corners to give me a fighting chance. And looks like they did suck at cornering, given how at the 8th corner, the significant gap had been drastically cut. However, that was still too early of a time to party, as another high-speed section awaited just after turn 9. For me, it was a good thing that the Viper messed up, since it gave me the chance needed to get into the slipstreaming range and keep up. Looks like the Cobra once again showed symptoms of Skilly's issues, as he overshot the hairpin and found himself smashed to the walls. Combined with the slipstream I've been enjoying from the Viper, I could say that the repeated lapses in judgment had allowed me a fighting chance to finally win the race. The guy in Cobra, sir? This is no bumper cars, it's a race. What are you doing? Yep, he said, stay behind me. Who knew that the real challenger all this time was the Viper? I shifted lanes before the second turn, and despite a small hiccup, I still occupied the innermost lane, which helped in repelling the Viper from P1. Now then, my mission would be defending this spot from the other drivers at all costs. On the straights, I was fully expecting an attack from either the Cobra or the Viper, but even at the end of the section, it never came. By the sharp 6th corner, I've managed to let out a sigh of relief, as the most dangerous part of the track was through. Or so I thought, as apparently, the Viper was capable of keeping up down the string of complex corners. I remained on guard until turn 8, where I finally managed to lose them. On the downhill part, I was quite surprised to see the advantage I was gaining despite the supposed power disadvantage I was against. And I was even more puzzled at how they were instead gaining on the final hairpin. I had to defend myself on the final straight of the race by anticipating their moves to properly defend. I absolutely refused to let go at the very end. I've raced long and hard for this moment, and I will not let anything get in my way now. At the very end, I have finally managed to score the final win required to clear the Stars and Stripes event. To the victor goes the spoils, and this time, let's see the kind of car I was awarded with from winning such an uphill battle. Finally, yes! A Camaro SS, completely American and has more power than my upgraded Chrysler. Not only that, but owning this car will open doors to more events. Now with the future of the run looking even brighter than ever, how will we proceed forward? We will see next time. You're still here? Well, does this mean you need more videos to watch? In that case, I got you covered.